Now, it was June 1st. It was 1994. I was happier than I've been in my whole entire life. I was busy working construction. I was working on my general contracting license so that I might start my own construction company someday. I loved to hunt and fish and spend, every extra second of the day in the mountains. On the weekends, I was racing quads, and I had a new girlfriend, and so my future looked bright and promising. Well, I got a call from a cousin of mine one afternoon. He explained to me that my two older brothers had borrowed one of his motorcycles to take my nieces and nephews for a ride up at our cabin over the Memorial Day weekend. Explained to me that my brothers were out of town and that he needed his bike back. So my new girlfriend Wendy and I hopped in my truck and we headed up towards my cabin. Now, as I got there, I hopped out of the truck, put my insulated coveralls on, kissed Wendy on the cheek, and headed off down the main road late that night. Now, it was late, and it was dark, and in my usual Clay Egan fashion, I was weaving in and out of the yellow lines. I was pushing myself harder and harder and driving faster and faster when all of a sudden 2 stray horses had gotten out of one of the local rancher stables, were loose on the road, and I ran into one. Now, Wendy, being just far enough behind me in the truck, all she could see was the sparks from the motorcycle skidding across the ground and the horses running off into the dark. And as she came upon me, I was face down on the road. I was bleeding from my head and my face, and I was unconscious. Now, Wendy, being in the medical field, she knew things were serious. She knew she had to very carefully try and roll me over and try and bring me to. And as she did, I looked up at her sobbing face, and I told her that I couldn't feel my legs. Then I asked her where my boots were. I don't know where that came from. I guess coming from a family full of a bunch of rednecks, your boots are an important piece of equipment. Well, then I slipped back into unconsciousness. And yes, I do have my boots on today. They make me look taller, don't you think? But Wendy knew she couldn't move me, and so she laid there with me until some help was able to come. Pretty soon, the Life Flight helicopter came, picked me up, flew me up to the University of Utah Medical Center, where I spent the next 12 weeks of my life. Now, upon arriving at the hospital, my family was already there, eagerly awaiting to find out what the prognosis was of my accident. And it's there where the doctors came out and told them that I had sustained a C6 fracture to my spine and that I was a quadriplegic. Told them that I'd spend the rest of my life in a wheelchair and that I'd probably be dependent upon somebody to look after me and take care of my daily needs for the rest of my life. He told my family not to expect much. Well, after that, they took me in to do the surgery on my neck to repair my broken spine. Now, I don't recall most of that. Actually, I don't recall anything until a few days later. The whole accident and the surgery was a blur. All I really knew is that there had been a minor glitch in my week, and as soon as I was fixed up, I was going to be out of there. You see, the doctors had told my family that I was handicapped, but nobody had told me. And maybe not knowing that prognosis in the beginning made all the difference for me. You see, I had my eyes on the goal. A small obstacle like temporary paralysis didn't obstruct my focus. My plan was to get fixed and walk out of that place, period. Well, with that goal in mind, I copped a pretty headstrong attitude. And that attitude has always gotten me to the top. Well, about 10 years ago, I went to work for a company by the name of Tough Shed. I'm sure most of you have heard of Tough Shed. Probably even have a Tough Shed in your yard. Well, I was sitting down at my office one afternoon when these 2 twin brothers came in. They explained to me that they're the promoters for the U-Rock rock crawling series. They explained to me that they needed Tough Shed to build them some ticket booths so that they could take around to their competitions to sell tickets out of. We sat there and we chatted for a while. I explained to them that I had a freak accident some years later, and that's how I wound up in my chair, and they told me a little bit about what rock crawling was. Well, to make a long story short, a week later, I was doing a photo shoot for the new U-Rock TV series with ESPN, and a month after that, I was competing professionally in the extreme sport of rock crawling. In my first year, I made it to the World Championships. I've been to 4 world championships now. I get to, travel all over the country and compete. And I compete against all other able-bodied drivers. I consistently place in the top 10 in the nation. Now, some may not call that a miracle, but I do.